right, there we are. Well, cool. So to kick things off, Barb, in your own words, who are you? Can you give the people a little bit of an intro?
Ooh, well, I am Barb Kielhofer, VP of Audience Design at Spark. You already heard the client roster list. It's a fancy title. Think about all things data, all things audience, from the systems you use to manage it, from how you capture it, from how you target it, from how you even just design your audience strategy overall. So it's literally all those touch points of who you want to reach.
So where I want to kick things off is I love with a grounding, right? Let's set some broader context, lay out the environment that we're in. How has the audience and identity landscape shifted over the last couple of years, and where are we today?
We were like, let's be honest, we were like this for such a long time. There was a lot of coasting happening, and then in the last, I would say, 5-6 years, it has gone like this. We've had a lot of updates in the space finally. We are focusing on identity finally. We are focusing on data capture finally. I think that it's been a very exciting time, but we've also had a lot of hits to us with various privacy legislations, various media entities wanting to take a space in privacy and wanting to take a stance in privacy that has kind of knocked us about. But the innovation keeps meeting the needs. So it's been a very exciting time to work in this space.
Yeah, I bet. Now, is everyone on the same page there? Has everyone kept up with those shifts? Or as you look out across the landscape of brands, where are folks starting to fall behind?
Even among my clients, and they all have dedicated data team, it's still not on parity. So even within having an expert in the system, they have not all matched the same level. And a lot of it is about their view on their first party, their view on how they're handling privacy and how conservative they want to be versus very bold and forward-moving. It's about the technology and how much they're willing to invest. So those things can create very large disparity among clients. The ones that are willing to spend a lot of money, the ones that are willing to take a stance on privacy, whether that's good or bad, the ones that are willing to be bold about capturing their data are going to win over the ones that are much more conservative.
All right, so now we're going to get into the meat of things and why I'm really excited to have this conversation, because the industry is changing rapidly over the last couple of years, mass acceleration, mass innovation, and over the next couple of days, we're going to dig deep into a lot of those emerging channels, those evolutions, but I want to have this conversation today to build that foundation for how brands and agencies can have resiliency moving forward. So where do they start? What do brands need to do to start to have that data-rich foundation that will give them that sense of comfort and resiliency through these turbulent times?
Yeah, I think the first step is having an expert, having a hand raiser. You don't have to have somebody that knows everything about data systems. It is learnable. I started my career in theater. This was not, this is definitely a big departure from where I started, and I was able to ramp up quite quickly. It is not rocket science. We have tools like AI that are absolutely helping us all become way smarter individuals. So I don't think you need to have somebody who has a degree in data science to have a data science expert. Find a hand raiser that's super interested in the space and get them to be your thought leader so that you have some direction. You need single direction. There's way too many companies handling data tech. There's too many different kinds of data tech. There's too many different approaches to audience and identity. You need to have somebody who can sort of guide the true north for you and figure out what's right for your brand. Otherwise, you're going to waste a ton of money getting, duplicative techs, duplicative approaches. So I'm all for spending the money. Like I said earlier, those that are willing to invest are going to be higher up in their maturity level, but invest wisely. Don't waste dollars having a clean room and a CDP that do the same exact technology just because it sounded sexy and you liked the acronym. Know where one is going to complement the other and where they're going to be the exact same tech that is a waste of dollar for you.
Totally. Okay, so let's open some old wounds. The cookie deprecation, up and down, will they, won't they? Like for the moment, we're all sitting here finally catching our breaths and feeling a little bit comfortable about that future. Should we rest on our laurels, or is there a real potential of that happening again? Like, let's talk about some of the foundational data that we have to be worried about.
So I called this. I fully said it was never going to happen. I wish I'd put money on it. I would say it's a nothing burger. Don't worry about it. But we would not have had the innovation that we have now had that not been a threat. We were resting on our laurels. There was not a ton of innovation in the space at the same rate that you saw. When cookieless hit, everybody was going to market with an identity product, with an alt ID, with a new way to look at audience. And I hadn't seen that in the prior 5 years. It was very much business as usual. You might see some interesting product here and there, but it was all kind of on parity. Man, did that space open once Google threatened cookieless. So I don't think we can stop innovating. We're on that track. Let's stay on that track regardless of whether cookies are a thing or not, because we've gotten so much out of what could have been continuing to just rest on our laurels. Like, I don't think we'd be talking about AI right now. I don't think we'd be talking about identity right now had that not happened. So let's not use the threat to make us innovate. Let's just continue to be smart and innovate.
So cookies pushed us, or the lack thereof, pushed us to do these really interesting things to really further our intelligence. Are there areas that in this identity space have similarly kind of stagnated and really need that attention? So when you talk about continuing to innovate and not wait for those threats to force you to move, where are you thinking about?
I'm thinking about how we're capturing tech and the tech we're using to capture. DMPs, sadly, I think are becoming really irrelevant very fast. Clean rooms and CDPs have come and swooped in and offered above and beyond what a DMP can provide. I would like to know what's next. Clean rooms have open potential to be kind of infinite. It's similar to how we think about Meta and how they sort of have open development. You can really build anything on top of it. Clean rooms, or at least the good ones, are built in much the same way. So if you have really smart data scientists, or you have a really good AI code that you can utilize yourself, you can really build your own tech stack on top of that. But we can't stop innovating. We can't just say, like, okay, we have great tech, we're done. As privacy becomes a thing, we need to get smarter about how we capture. What is the next iteration of data capture? I can't tell you what that is. I'm certainly not smart enough to be the one who designs it, but I would love to buy it if somebody creates it. So it's about not resting on your laurels. Just because we have really strong technology now, it doesn't mean that in 2 years it's not going to be obsolete.
So let's talk about how you evaluate that technology. There's a lot of supporting infrastructure that goes into building out identity practices, audience management practices. So if you're a brand or an agency and you're looking to guide a client even on selecting a CDP, let's say, what are the puts and takes? How do you evaluate what you're looking for, and then even at times whether you build or buy?
Yeah, I think it's about knowing what you're willing to invest and knowing your resources. I find that a lot of clients are not honest with themselves about those things, and they undercut themselves. They don't have enough development. They want to build their own tech stack, but they don't have enough development resources to do so. So it languishes for 10 years. Or they want a really strong tech stack, but they're not willing to spend the dollars for it. So that's the first thing, is get realistic about what you're gonna do, because I can give you a good solution with the amount of money you wanna spend, but I need you to be honest with that. I don't want going for the sky and then having to pull you back down. The other thing is looking at what your end goals are. Use cases always need to be the start of where you're going. I don't need a bunch of tech that doesn't match my use case. Then I'm wasting money. Again, I'm leaving things on the table. So I want to know what you want to get out of this tech, how much data you have to put in it, what's your 5-year, 10-year goal, and let's match our RFIs with that and figure out what tech is going to be the best for you. And again, don't try to do it yourself. Get a hand raiser. Get somebody who is, even curious about this space, that's willing to learn up a little bit. I guarantee you, after 5 meetings with different, CDPs, clean rooms, et cetera, they're going to be really knowledgeable, because a lot of these sales reps are great resources for learning more, for growing your knowledge base. But don't try to do it if you don't feel comfortable in that space. Find an expert that can help lead the charge.
So a little bit ago, you said something that's a little bit spicy, and I don't want to misrepresent your perspective on it, but you kind of said DMPs, forget about it. Like, on the way out, it's already old news. With the rate of change within this industry, how should I think about something like CDP? Does that have staying power? Does it have permanence? Or is there something else on the horizon that's going to make us go, all right, that's old news?
I do think clean rooms are coming for CDPs pretty hard, but what I'm seeing is that technology is starting to condense. And I'm seeing the smart DMPs start to evolve their tech. Because what DMPs had that CDPs hadn't, because it's not like CDPs are new. CDPs have existed. I used a version of it when I worked in theater. Like, they've existed way longer than a lot of our tech. But DMPs knew data out was the importance, that we had to reach our media partners, and that was the end goal. And not all CDPs have kind of figured that out. So the tech emerging, I think, is the future, that like the smart DMPs are starting to adopt CDP technology or say, no, we're going to scrap it, we're going straight to clean room. I think apps are definitely continuing to be the voice of the future. We always say, like, oh my God, it's the year of mobile. It's been the year of mobile since 2006. But it's not going anywhere. So having that mobile compatibility, like really thinking about every single touch point. Are your call rooms connected? That is not a digital interface, but is there a way to have a data capture point for your call rooms so that when a customer calls in, we're still having that single point of view, that single flow? So I think you're going to see everything sort of build up. Rather than there be new products, they're going to be saying, like, here's the seed of what I have. Oh, there's a new technology in the space, let's pull that forward. Oh, there's a new way to capture data, let's pull that forward. So hopefully we don't have another acronym to learn. I cannot promise it. But the goal is to make the tech we have smarter rather than starting all over again from scratch.
All right, so clean rooms, that sounds like what you're placing some bets on here. Are they all created equal? And if not, what are those points of differentiation that you look for?
Yeah, no, again, not all of them are made for marketing. We have to remember that we have a slice of the pie, but this technology really facilitates a bigger view. So you need to know that they are a marketing forward clean room, and you're going to, again, data out is super important. It's great that you can pull your data in and you can analyze it, but if you can't action on that, you're going to be kind of left holding the bag a little bit. So I think you have to know that it's right for you and your use cases and evaluate it that way. And I would also evaluate staying power. Are they continuing to innovate? What does their 10-year roadmap look like? What is their vision for the future? So that you're not getting something that's going to be obsolete in the next 2 to 3 years.
Okay, so now I kind of want to turn a little bit away from the tech side, talk a little bit more on the audience side. And Barb, when you and I first had our very first conversation, it was a Zoom call, and you were in a Lyft coming back from a Lenny Kravitz concert, which is the best way to tee off conversations on super rich data, targeting, audience design, and so on. But one of the things you brought up was a concern around how brands are approaching Gen Z and Gen Alpha. I want you to elaborate on that. What has your stress levels rising?
Yeah, a couple things. One, we are going to have Gen Alpha in our marketing pool within 4 years. So that is not a long time when we think about the life of our brands. So we need to start a strategy now so that we know how to be capturing their data and have it ready by the time that they're old enough to receive, marketing from us. The other part of the problem is definitely Gen Alpha, a little bit of Gen Z, are going back to an old school model for life. They're very privacy minded. They're very, I don't know if it's tech savvy. They want to go back to the 1990s. They want their Razor flip phone. They want, analog emojis. That's going to make it really hard for us to capture their data. If they're pulling back from the web, if they're pulling back from technology, the through line is not going to be there. Yeah, we inherently get them with TikTok and with influencer strategies, Thankfully, they're still really into all of that. But when we're talking about the rest of our ecosystem and all the touch points to reach them, they are not streaming and they are not, X, Y, and Z. So we need to start thinking about if that trend continues, how do we create an analog interface for them that they can interact with our brand and we can capture their data, know more about them, be able to target them appropriately. And we only have 4 years to do it. So it is something that we need to be future forward. It's really great to continue to focus on your millennial strategy, but the future is going to hit you in the face really fast. And you have to have one arm in the present and one arm, where we're going to be going.
All right, so let's dig into this a little bit. What are some of the biggest mistakes or missteps that you're seeing brands make today when they develop or they activate against their Gen Z and soon-to-be Gen Alpha strategies?
I find they mold them into with millennials. I hear a lot of we're going after Gen Z and millennial. They are not the same people, and they do not think the same ways. I think they need bespoke touch points. They need creative that speaks to them. They need, one of them is much more willing to have the quote-unquote stalker ad that really seems a little too uncomfortably close, and one of them is very much not, is gonna be turned off by it. One of them, I would say, the one of them obviously is the Gen Z. If they feel uncomfortable with how you reached out to them with marketing, they're savvy enough to start complaining on their socials, to start getting on their TikTok and talking about how your brand marketed to them in a poor way. They are, for as analog as they want to go, they're very savvy as to how we're reaching out to them. Millennials, I don't think we care as much, depending on where you are in the elder millennial spectrum. I think we appreciate the personal touch. And so if you whitewash all of your audiences and treat them all the same, you're gonna have varying degrees of success. If you're really bespoke with your audience strategy, know who your consumer is, know how you wanna reach them and what the best way to reach that pocket is, you're gonna have a lot more success than just one single broad approach across everything.
So if I understood you right, I wanna kind of say this back. It feels like what you're saying is Gen Z has a different expectation for the value delivered via personalization. And if you get that wrong, it sticks out like a sore thumb. Am I reading that right?
Absolutely.
So then what are those types of personalization tactics that are effective with them? What are they looking for when it comes to that sort of matched identity?
Yeah, for what we're seeing right now, it is value prop. So when you're capturing their data, what are you giving back to them? Is it a coupon? Is it a loyalty status? Is it an understanding of personalization? We've seen, especially with ATT, the prompts that explain why you should track work way better because it's not that they don't want personalization, they just don't want it to a level that it feels like you know everything about them, which we know it's a dance. We don't know everything about everybody. I wish we did. But we also don't want to seem like we're stalking you constantly. So I think it's about personalization as light touch. An example we have for Starbucks is we will show you the beverage that you most likely purchase. Whether you're keying into that, I doubt it. I'm sure on some level you feel it in your bones. You go oh, that's the macchiato I buy every day. That's the cold brew I buy every day. But you're not going hi, Barbara, would you like another macchiato today? That's going to be a little too much. I have an example from Nordstrom that I love. They only ever show me shoes in my size. When I go to their homepage and they're saying you might like this, it's never something that I can't buy. And that's the level that I like. I get value from that. And so yes, you are using my data and you know those things about me, but it provides me with value. So I don't feel uncomfortable about it.
Yeah, I love that. Those are threads a needle, right, on creepy to like personalized in a way that feels meaningful. I don't want to frame every conversation that we have here around like, oh, what are the worst things people are doing? Where are they getting it wrong? So you just gave some great examples there. In broader strokes, what does best class personalization look like? How do you think about that at scale?
Yeah, I think it's value exchange. I think it's about creative that moves the needle, but again, is not too creepy. And I think instinctively you know it. When you're reviewing something, if it gives you the ick, it's gonna give the consumer the ick. At scale is the hard part. I think that's where all of us have a giant challenge, because we can get very pocketed in our audiences, we can get very bespoke with them, but is that going to be broad enough to move the ROI? And the delta between that is something that I constantly battle with every day. What are our broad strokes and what are our very honed in strokes, and how do those work in tandem? Because you need both tactics. We can't, as much as I want everything to be hella personalized, it's not functional for how we need to reach our audience. We have to have some of those broader strokes, and they have to have that broad stroke appeal. You can't take your personalized approach and make it broad. You have to know, this is my broad base, these are the things I want the audience to know and to take away, and then personalization is gonna come through and gonna, you know, to your point, thread the needle. It's gonna get them to make that sale. It's gonna get them to be brand loyal. So knowing that they're not necessarily the same thing and being very prescriptive about that.
Okay, so as we start to get towards wrapping up here, if there's a brand CMO that's listening into this conversation and they're like, oh, dadgummit, I am not ready for the next years ahead, I don't have half of what you just laid out, what are the 2 to 3 steps you might recommend to them to start to prep their business and their data practice, their audience practice for some semblance of stability in this, as we've established, very volatile space?
Yeah, if we're talking about crawl, walk, run, I would say first step is we just, Schedio had a great example of a data aggregator, of an AI tool that you, with zero tech of your own, can start utilizing to start segmenting your audiences. You don't have to have invested any money to start from there. So like, if all you're running is a whole bunch of really broad linear, you too can be able to have an audience strategy using tech and tools that are pretty much free to everybody. In the meantime, you work to sort of build what your use cases are, what your end goal is, so that you are building your strategy based on what's going to be best for your brand in the future, rather than, again, just spending money. Somebody is going to come to you and tell you, you need a CDP. You need to really investigate why, what it's going to do for you, what you need. Not everybody's going to need the same level of sophistication. Not everybody has the ability to create a giant pool of first-party data. So it might not be relevant for you. So I think it's start small and then slowly build up your practice, but build up your practice in a way that is really grounded in what your goals are for the future.
Okay, last question. No one likes to be the last to know, caught on their back foot about something that launched 2 weeks ago and they had no clue. So if your peers in the audience today are feeling overwhelmed or unsure of where to turn to stay up to date on the latest things, to keep up with these changes, besides attending the MediaPost Data and Programmatic Insider Summit, where else should they go to stay abreast of the latest and greatest changes?
I use my peers. I would say utilize each other. When I was starting to shift my career from theater to advertising, I took every meeting I could. I met with every rep I could, because every time I did, they taught me something without knowing they were teaching me something. So, I'd have my little notebook of things that I was gonna go Google. Well, now I'd put it in ChatGPT of like, ooh, I didn't know that term. What is that? If I'm not comfortable asking in the room. So I would say use each other. Like I said, there are going to be people like me who are just kind of data geeks, who are hand raisers in the space and want to talk about it and want to teach you about it. The trades are great, but it is going to have a certain level of knowledge base, and you kind of have to know what you're searching for. So it's not going to be your go-to. Human beings are your best bet, so use each other. If you don't know about, I don't know a certain tech and tools, hit up one of the reps and say, I would love to know more about your product. It's going to be great for them. It gets to put a meeting on their books. It's going to be great for you because you're going to learn more about that space and start to create those synergies.
Love it. All right, well, thank you, Barb. At this point, we're going to turn it over to the crowd so they can ask you the harder-hitting questions.
Oh, no. I will accept questions about the Lenny Kravitz concert.
And please, when you are asking a question, introduce yourself, your name, and who you are with.
Hi, Barb. I'm Angelica. I'm with Novartis. We're a pharmaceutical company. So I personally am still learning programmatic, which is why I'm here. But I do want to understand, as we're creating content, how do we work with our AOR who is buying our media for us to ensure that that pharma content is showing up in safe spaces and that it makes sense? Because they don't always get to see the creative until we traffic it. And then it's like, oh, that's not working.
That is a great question, and especially for you with pharma, because you have unique challenges that most of the other people in this room don't, especially with data capture and data use tying to HIPAA. Most people don't have to worry about HIPAA unless they're going to their doctor. So I would say make it a conversation between the two, and I would ask them, what do you recommend for the creative? They're not always going to get the opportunity to shift the creative, but having that POV is going to get the two teams thinking together in tandem of how do we match the audience to the creative. Creative ideally is audience-led, so that the creative is matching the audience you're going for, but I can reverse engineer that. I can take your creative and go, what's the best audience that's gonna react really well to this? So I would encourage them to start collaborating together so that even if they're not seeing the full end vision until it's trafficked, they're at least getting their minds going on what the best audience would be for this, what's the best reach approach for that. And hopefully they know all your specific considerations to take into account as well and are not doing anything that would violate HIPAA or get you in trouble as a pharma company. Is that helpful?
Barb, hard-hitting question for you while we wait. What is your favorite Lenny Kravitz song?
Oh, that's a hard question.
It was supposed to be a softball, Barb. Come on.
I think it ain't over till it's over. It's very sexy. He was very sexy while he sang it too.
Love it. I'm Haley Wise from Scale Marketing. I loved what you said about cookies going away, kind of being a kickstart to innovate. I work on a lot of tech partnerships and recommendations about tech stack and things like that. Have you rethought any of the tech alignment or maybe shifting to other ID solutions, since the demise isn't really coming anymore, and rethought about maybe we don't need to invest that much with certain partners or technology, knowing that we can kind of tap into multiple IDs for the foreseeable future?
Yeah, I think when we first started, clients were like, "Oh, I have to pick one," and I was like, "Why?" Unless we're stacking your entire solution on that one ID, which to be fair, Publicis has an ID, I can't deny that. So yes, do we stack a lot on that ID? Absolutely. But do I tell my client that's the only ID they should ever use? No. Reach is still important. It is always a balance of personalization and reach. So I think more tools in your toolbox, especially when they don't cost you additional money. In theory, being able to reach on different IDs is not gonna cost a ton incrementally, whereas incremental tech will cost you a lot of money. So it's the downside is pretty low, the upside is pretty high, and right now within the space, we don't necessarily always have parity on the IDs. Some are better than others. And so utilizing a mix of them is going to help you learn which ones are better than others, learn which ones are going to work for you, and ensure you're reaching your audience rather than just going to a tiny, minute pool of them.
Hi, I'm Evan. I'm from Horizon Media. I was really fascinated in what you're talking about of the need to start strategizing for approaching Gen Zs versus Gen Alphas and how it's vastly different than how we've been targeting millennials. I thought it was really interesting because I feel like organically we've been seeing that on like TikTok or other mediums where you're seeing the college kids get the flip phones and things like that, or people are going and really excited to like make their own magazines and make more physical print media, and they're circling back to that nostalgia almost. But when you were talking about how we have to think about different ways to find that, do you think that is, like my head was going towards more out of home, my head was kind of going towards more in-person events, which we're seeing a lot of things where people are wanting to, brands are looking to create community to be able to create that audience. So how do we then connect the dots of where the marketing team is going to do in-person events and to maybe do more out of home or to be at like a music festival, for example? How do we then use data capture for then the programmatic teams later to then tie that back in to do something with?
Yeah, I think when you're coming up with this, if you instead of starting with the event or instead of starting with what the end application is going to be, start with the data you want to capture and then back into how your event is going to get that. Is it a raffle where they have to give their email? Is it something where they have to take a picture and at your brand, so it's based on social engagement? Like what do you want to get out of it? And then build your entire application around that. You know, if it's an out-of-home application, is it, I wouldn't say a QR code, I wouldn't necessarily recommend that, but that's the only thing that comes to mind. Is it a QR code on the billboard that they have to capture? Maybe it's, if you see this billboard in the wild, take a picture and you might win a prize, so that you have a way to link what you've done to that person, but start with that link. Don't start with the event, and then build what you want to do around it. I would also say it's going to be hard to measure them until they're in the space where we can sort of like legally or like, you know, ethically reach out to them. ROI is going to be a bit iffy, so you need to also work with your brands and with your agencies to understand that, like, we're going to have to look at halo. We're going to have to look at directional ROI. It's not going to be as one-to-one, but it does give us a place to start. So yes, it's not all the way to bright, it's not perfect, but let's not wait for perfect. Let's start building those strategies now so that once we can do a one-to-one connection with them, we are so ready.
Okay. Barb Kielhofer, thank you so much.
Thank you.